Good afternoon and welcome to our final webinar, Learning from the Innovators, as part of our Adaptive Fashion series in partnership with Runway of Dreams and Gamet Management. Once again, my name is Sasha Brown and I am the Director of Professional Development at the CFDA, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone today. This has been an incredible month-long journey, bringing people with disabilities, designers, brand leaders, academics, and researchers to the forefront who are advocating for a more inclusive fashion industry. As Mindy mentioned in our first webinar, there are over 1 billion people globally who have a disability. So it's kind of crazy to think that adaptive fashion is still not mainstream. But we're really hoping that through these conversations and our continued work at the CFDA, we will see more headlines like that of Nike's from this week, who unveiled their first ever hands-free sneaker. So I want to formally introduce Mindy Shire once again, who is the founder of Runway of Dreams and Gamet Management. Runway of Dreams Foundation is a nonprofit organization that works towards a future of inclusion, acceptance, and opportunity in the fashion industry for people with disabilities. The foundation develops, delivers, and supports programs and events that celebrate people's differences, breaks down stereotypes, highlights the need for mainstream adaptive apparel, and showcases people with disabilities in fashion. With the overwhelming amount of requests Mindy received at Runway of Dreams from a multitude of brands and industries for connections to people with disabilities, in 2019, Mindy created Gamet Talent Management to represent people with disabilities and create a marketplace where businesses and industries can connect to this target audience. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our panelists today, who are a group of incredible innovators with disabilities and innovators working with people with disabilities. In today's conversation, they are going to share how they solve a problem and create products or concepts to help navigate a world that was not designed for them. So it's my pleasure to introduce Billy Price, who's the co-founder of Billy Footwear, Casey Marshall, who's an independent fashion designer, Adriana Malozzi, who is an entrepreneur, innovator, disability advocate at Quirk Labs, Jovana Mullins, who's the co-founder and CCO at Olivia, Ryan Hudson Peralta, who is a speaker, advocate, mentor, and designer, and also Quay Williams, who's an independent fashion designer of Mannequin. So once again, I'd just like to remind our audience that we want you to participate in this conversation. Our panelists are very eager to answer your questions, so please feel free to submit your questions and comments and feedback to me in the chat box, and we'll host a Q&A at the end of the webinar. So Mindy, once again, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sasha. And even though this is our last webinar of this series, it is actually just the beginning. So
absolutely.
Sasha and I are crafting many, many more opportunities to work together to make this change happen. It has been such an incredible honor to be able to have done this series, and the series itself was very strategically aligned so that we could help guide you on the different nuances within the fashion industry that relate to inclusion of people with disabilities, from research to product to being in the public eye. And this panel today, I specifically saved for the last one because I think all of these amazing panelists really have worked so hard to show that not only does innovation come from people with disabilities or working with people with disabilities, but in many cases, they're in the same position that you are about trying to get involved in the world of adaptive, whether they have a disability or not. So it is an exceptional group of panelists, and I am so honored, not only professionally as a designer and entrepreneur, but also from a mother perspective, that I feel so good that my son Oliver is going to grow up in a world that not only accepts him, but believes in him. So without further ado, I am so excited to introduce you to our panelists. As you know from previous webinars, I believe very much that the panelists should introduce themselves. So I will do just that. Casey, I'm going to start with you, please.
Yeah, I am Casey Marshall. I graduated from Kent State University in 2019, where I got my BFA in fashion design. So for my senior collection, I did a adaptive wear, evening wear collection for women who use wheelchairs, and it was based on my own experience with prom dress shopping. So I am a wheelchair user myself, and always been a fashionista, and I wanted this show stop and gown for my senior prom, and I wasn't able to find things that worked for my body type because I have scoliosis, and so that is what inspired the collection, and I got to work with 6 amazing models that also use wheelchairs, and they were along for the whole design process. And after graduation, I started doing disability consulting as well as content creation. And now I am an assistant designer for a exciting new platform called Juniper Unlimited. It is a marketplace and content hub for people with disabilities.
Thank you, Casey. We're so excited to have you. Quay.
Hi everyone, my name is Quay Rowe, and I am a fashion designer and the owner of Mannequin LLC, also a wardrobe stylist. And I have the disability Herbs palsy, which I found out about in 2018 after I did an interview with the Root of America on Facebook, which premiered and since has reached over 3.8 million views, which exposed me to a world full of people who have Herbs palsy just like me. And with my luxury streetwear brand Mannequin, I plan to take it to new heights. And with my degree in fashion studies from Montclair State University, I'm just excited to really hone my skills and use my expertise in great ways. Thank you so much, Mindy, for having me, for the CFDA, for creating this amazing safe space with all the amazing panelists. Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. Jovana.
Thank you so much, Mindy, and to the CFDA for presenting this incredible webinar series. And I'm so honored to be a part of it. And I think it's about time that we have this discussion. So I'm Jovana. I'm the co-founder of Alivia. And Alivia, we make radiant women's wear clothing inspired by the artistic expressions of people with developmental disabilities. Every collection begins by transforming the artwork of creators with disabilities into bold prints and embroidery across our elevated silhouettes. Each artist is compensated for the use of their artwork, and 10% of every purchase is donated back to the creator's nonprofit art therapy program to help provide more creative support to generations to come. And every garment also includes a scannable tag, allowing the wearer to see, meet, and experience the original artists and the impact that their purchase made. One of our main goals as a company is to also become an inclusive employer throughout every aspect of the brand. So yeah, I'm so excited to be a part of this, and yeah, it's about time.
Thank you. Ryan, who I like to call my kindred spirit because he also has an insane hat collection, an insane sneaker collection, amongst all the other amazing things that you do. But I, of course, had to acknowledge our mutual issue, I will say, with our collections. Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really humbled to be here. As Mindy said, my name's Ryan Hudson Peralta. I'm a father, husband, actor, speaker, and designer from Detroit, Michigan, and I like to say who just happened to be born without arms and legs. As Mindy mentioned, I'm a sneaker, hat, and streetwear collector. Online, I'm known as Look Mom, No Hands. That's my brand. I mentor families that have children born like me all around the United States. And I've been designing clothing for myself almost my entire life. I learned at a young age that, clothing wasn't designed for me. And I wanted to wear everything that my friends were wearing. So I would, talk to my mom and whoever and my grandma about modifying clothing, so I could get it on and off easier. and I've been doing that ever since. I've had the pleasure to work with several companies, including TACMA is a subsidiary of American Eagle, and currently I'm in talks with a luxury brand about designing adaptive fashion for them. So I just want to thank you guys for having me. I'm humbled to be here, like I said.
Thank you, Ryan. Adriana.
Hi, thank you for having me today. I'm the only non-fashion industry person here. I am a techie, a serial entrepreneur. I am the co-founder of Quirk Labs, a collaborative community for innovators and creators with disabilities and people who are working on developing accessible solutions. And I think it's really important to include all people when designing anything. That way everyone can benefit. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And actually, Adriana, it was very strategic that I asked you to be on the panel because I'm a big believer of the cross-section of fashion and technology, because in my opinion, that equals adaptive and equals including more customers for the same product. So thank you for being here. Last but certainly not least, my dear friend, Billy.
Yeah, thank you, Mindy. This is such a great opportunity, and thank you, CFDA, for having me on. I'm Billy Price, co-founder of Billy Footwear. We are a shoe brand based out of Seattle, Washington. And you know that our design basically consists of a zipper that goes around the outside of the shoe and around the toe, which allows the whole upper to fold over. And the inspiration behind that came from my own story. I'm a wheelchair user. I broke my neck when I was a teenager. And when that happened, a lot of things in my world changed. And one of the big things that I used to be able to do that I could no longer do was put on my own shoes. So myself and my co-founder, Mr. Darren Donaldson, we decided to do something about it. And our small little idea continued to grow, and then we got into major department stores, and now we sell the brand around the planet. So it's been a fun ride.
Thank you. So now we're going to dive into some deeper questions that hopefully will pull out even more importance of this panel. And actually, Billy, I'm going to start with you. We spent a lot of time in previous panels talking about rethinking the way things have been done or modifying how they already exist. I mentioned in a previous panel that the button and buttonhole was developed in the 13th century, and the fact that we're still using it is lunacy. Talk to me a little bit about, was this a methodology to help you innovate in terms of how a shoe was classically put on the foot?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you know, my story, my challenge, because I don't have very good hand dexterity, and also my lower extremities, I mean, I'm paralyzed from the chest down. You know, my challenge was stuffing my foot into a shoe, and everything on the market, it just didn't allow me to be successful. I mean, I could probably use some sort of medical device, but it didn't have the fashion element to it. So when we entered into this thing, it was a matter of looking at it through the lens of someone with a disability. And it was really selfishly my own lens, because I'm the one that was trying to overcome this challenge. So we really tried to, you know, look at the traditional shoe, figure out a way to modify it that would be successful for me. And the part that's so wild is it was so moving and such a special moment in time when I finally put my shoes on again that we had to share it. And it was amazing how this small little idea all of a sudden just continued to catch momentum from so many other people.
I love that, and I'm going to put a zinger of a question in there. I think that you have also discovered that not just people with disabilities are wearing Billy footwear, that you are just simply expanding the customer base to be inclusive of everyone, to be able to wear the same shoe. Accurate?
That's very accurate, and that's an incredibly important point. I mean, our premise was it was kind of under the banner of universal design. We wanted to take fashion and function and smash the two together. We didn't want to create like something that would kind of silo someone that needed function. We wanted to be able to level the playing field altogether, create something that everyone would be successful with. And it's been very interesting to see how those that used to not have options for footwear now can wear the shoes, and those that have all the options in the world for footwear want to wear those shoes too. So it's been great to be able to level that playing field.
Fantastic. And Jovana, speaking of kind of disrupting or thinking about other ways to do what has typically been done in terms of who is the designer. Do you see that as innovative?
You know, honestly, I don't think it should be considered innovative, because I think it's just insane that we haven't, that our industry hasn't embraced people with disabilities on the design side. And, you know, I guess it is considered innovative right now because we're just starting to think that way. But yeah, I mean, what our whole brand is built on is true expression and showcasing the talents and abilities that people with disabilities have, and really breaking down those boundaries and you know, stigmas that society has. And we really hope that we'll inspire other brands and other companies to look at people with disabilities for what they can do, and for the incredible contributions that they can make to companies. You know, when for us, our first collection, we're partnering with 3 artists who have autism. And a lot of times with autism, they don't necessarily communicate the same way you and I do, verbally, or, you know, even just socially. So for them, art is their main, can be their main vehicle for expression and showcasing who their personality is and communicating. So that was kind of, you know, what we wanted to bring forth and show people and inspire people who buy our garments, and really connect the two.
And do you feel that working with people with disabilities has kind of shaped or formed how you are building your company, your brand?
Absolutely. I think, you know, from day one, we want to be an inclusive brand, and it's something that, you know, we're authentically built on. It's not something that we're just adding, or we're just doing a one-time partnership, or, you know, we're just having a model with a disability in the campaign. You know, those are all amazing things, and they're huge steps for brands. But for us, we really, our whole foundation is built on inclusivity and really bringing awareness to these talents and providing a voice in all aspects of creativity.
Amazing. Adriana, with the creation of Quirk Labs to empower entrepreneurs and creators with disabilities through powerful connection solutions, I'm curious, do you think that people with disabilities are natural creators and innovators, and why?
Yeah, people with disabilities have to adapt literally on the fly on a consistent basis because the world is not designed for us. So they are the best innovators because of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And maybe tell us a little bit about something that you designed called the Puffin that came out of necessity, but now it is helping, I'm sure, millions of people.
So, yeah, so I created a mouth operated input device for people with limited mobility in their upper extremities to control all of their consumer electronics. So it's completely wireless and portable. And so you could be anywhere. You don't have to be in your wheelchair to still have access to, let's say, your mobile device. You could be in bed, you could be on the beach lounging in a beach chair and still have access to your mobile devices. And, you know, if you have access to a mobile device these days, you literally have access to the world. So that's what was important to us.
And you made it happen. So
Yeah.
absolutely unbelievable. Ryan, would you say that you're a natural innovator, creator?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I was designing and modifying clothes like as long as I could remember when I was a little kid. And not only that, like Adriana said, I don't know if I can say it even better, but you know, this world wasn't designed for us. Like products weren't designed for it. Not even us. Like definitely not me. Definitely, you know, like everybody's the disability and abilities are different, right? This world was not designed for everyone. And when it comes to, like earlier today, I was having trouble getting my webcam screwed onto the tripod, but we figure things out. We figure out ways to do it. And I didn't screw it on the top like everybody else would. No, I laid it down and I screwed the tripod onto the camera. It's just, that's what we have to do. And we figure things out. And that's what I've been doing my entire life.
I couldn't agree more. And obviously that's what caught the eye of the luxury brand that I can't wait to reveal, hopefully someday soon, that you are potentially working with. Do you think that they are tapping into you because you have shown what's possible and what can be?
Yep. All the designs and everything that I've worked on is, see, I look at accessible fashion and adaptive fashion as like the best adaptive fashion is fashion that'll work for everyone, not just for someone, with limited mobility or someone without arms and legs. The stuff that I design and the stuff that I work on is for everyone. And, and that's, I mean, think about the best product, the best products I use, the most successful products I use is a Bluetooth headset and a bidet toilet seat. Those products weren't designed for people with disabilities in mind, but they are amazing and they work for everyone. And that's what I want to do with my clothing design.
I love that. And I think we can certainly draw parallels to many different products, especially even in the world of fashion and beauty and accessories, is even the notion of eyeglasses. They were a medical device that was developed to help people see better. Now they are a multi-billion-dollar industry of sunglasses, eyeglasses, whatnot. It is a complete fashion accessory. So I think your point is so important, and I definitely want to underscore it, that products that are developed and or already exist that people with disabilities can utilize or have created can make the world better. And I think that's something that we really need to understand as being on the forefront as designers, as the fashion industry, as the public eye of what we could be doing. Casey, you have been a little modest with your introduction, as you were really a star in that the Today Show did a whole piece on you and the designs that you created at Kent State and the fashion show that you did. And I thought it was really interesting and very important to kind of spend a minute to talk about. Here you are as a wheelchair user who also has scoliosis. In the creation of your line, you learned from other women wheelchair users. So it doesn't matter if you have a disability or you don't. It doesn't matter what type of designer that you are, working collaboratively with your population, and in this case, women in wheelchairs, you still also learned. Elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the disability community is so diverse, like even just the wheelchair community, power chairs or manual chairs, people with dexterity issues, ambulatory wheelchair users. So I really did have to tap into my community and talk to people about their experiences in order to design the collection, because yes, I did have my own like lived-in experience with prom dress shopping and what worked and what didn't work for me, but I don't have the dexterity issues. So I was learning about, the struggle that people were having with zippers and the struggle that people were having with hemming their pants, and things were too long for them. And I definitely got to learn a lot from my people in my community, and yeah.
I think that's so important. I hope people are really getting their heads around this, that it doesn't matter, if you have a disability or not. Learning from the population, whether you're in it or not, is critically important to the design process. Can you just tell us quickly what the feedback was from the women that you designed for? What did this mean to them?
Yeah, it was amazing to see their confidence that they got from having independence. We did a big fashion show, and one of my models, there was only one accessible bathroom, and I had 6 models that needed it, and she was able to get dressed independently in the hallway by herself because of the garments and because of the adaptations. And the confidence that brings you and the dignity that brings to your life, that you're able to get dressed on your own. It's just amazing.
And also to point out that, every category within the fashion industry needs to be looked at. And in this case, it was evening wear, formal wear that people with disabilities, want to look beautiful too in their evening dresses. So super important. I think there's huge opportunity out there for that category. Do you also feel that way?
Absolutely, yeah. We're fashionistas. We go to the events that everyone else goes to, and we deserve to look good and feel good in our garments.
I love it. I can't wait to see what you create in life. Quay, I loved that. Thankfully, we just met last week, and I was like, you must join the panel immediately. I wasn't taking no for an answer, which unfortunately seems to be my MO. But what I loved about our conversation is that you have a brand, you have this, amazing collection, but yet in recent years, you just discovered about adaptive, even having a disability yourself, and figuring it out as you go, as you have the use of only one hand. Can you elaborate a little bit on that piece of your design journey?
Sure. As you said, the adaptive world for me was totally brand new. It wasn't actually until 2019, my senior project at Montclair. My teacher, our project was adaptive clothing. So I'm like, what's this? And when I read, I found out that it was clothing for people with disabilities, and my heart literally warmed up because all my life, because I didn't know the technical term of Erb's palsy or anything like that, I literally didn't think a world existed for us in terms of fashion, and I just made do what it do every time. So when I found out what adaptive clothing was, it really just opened up my mind, because I'm like, if I'm a guy with a disability and I'm unaware of adaptive clothing, imagine all the people across the world who don't have disabilities, or people who take care of people with disabilities. They don't know that clothing exists. And if I can make beautiful clothing that makes people feel good with a disability, and still fit in, or feel included with their favorite celebrities or their peers, that's a pathway that I believe that I can definitely take to bridge that gap. So yeah.
I love that. And one of the things that I enjoyed so much about our pre-conversation was that you are now looking into making adaptive options of your collection. So really the beginning of your collection was very much for able-bodied people and whatnot, but now you realized, even having a disability, that there must be adaptive options even in your own line.
Right.
So
Yes.
yeah, tell us a little bit about why that's important to you.
That's very important to me, because representation is vital in getting adaptive clothing into the mainstream world, and also just to show kids who may not see people that look like them wearing garments that they love, and because I know as a kid, for me not being able to see myself in certain spaces on television, on the runway shows, and on ad campaigns, it kind of left me in mystery of life. And if I can be that beacon of light to kind of show people, young or old, that you can wear haute couture like garments just like everyone else, and you can actually make them as well. Just because I can do it, it means that you can do it too. So that motivates me, and that fires me up just to continue to go, because everything that I do is confirmation that although you have a disability, it doesn't enable you. It's a super ability, because we now have the option and the opportunity to do things differently than the norm. So that's so much fun to experience.
I love it. And what a joyful burst of energy you are. I absolutely love your everything about you. This next question is for all of the panelists, and this could be one or the other or both. What was the most innovative discovery on your professional journey, and was it based on need or ingenuity, and or both? Ryan, I'm going to start with you.
I would say need. I mean, I think everything that I come up with or everything that happens. So a lot, I do speaking, and a lot of motivational speakers will say failure is not an option. To me, failure is a must, because the quicker I fail at something, the quicker I can learn to fix it. And I mean, I fail all day long on tons of things, but that's how I figure out and learn. And so I would definitely say a need, because I couldn't figure it out, or I couldn't do it. And I kept failing at it, and I kept learning, and I did it.
Was there a moment that it actually led to ingenuity in terms of something that you didn't even think would be designed or discovered, or even from a brand perspective? I mean, let's even just take your sneaker collection. The unbelievable amount of sneakers. I would imagine the typical response may be, how does he wear a sneaker? And why does he have a sneaker collection? And I know maybe there's some audience members out there that are, like, how could she ask that question? But I think you'll all agree with me that these are questions we want to be asked.
Yeah.
So Ryan, explain to us, why do you have a sneaker collection?
So I do have feet. I just they're just like kid size feet, and I only have one toe on each foot. So my mom was always like, when I was younger, she's like, oh, maybe we should put gloves on them. She was always worried I was going to be cold. And then I discovered sneakers, and it was all over from there. And my sneaker collection can go on any shelf because they don't get dirty, because I'm never standing. So my shoes are what the sneakerheads call dead stock. That means they're pretty much right out the package. And that's why I have sneakers.
Ah, ingenuity. There you go.
Ingenuity. There you go.
Amazing. Billy.
Wow, well, that's a great question. I think I should best break it up a little bit. I'd say the biggest discovery that we have had on our journey here was our brand started with just a personal need to overcome, and then when we came up with that solution, our eyes were opened so wide because we found ourselves trying to fill this gap that was massive. We had no idea there was such a gap in the marketplace to be able to have some sort of footwear that kind of bridged the gap between the fashion and the function, and to be able to be that inclusive brand and that universal design. But I'd say the innovative part of it happened when we started to be able to connect directly with the audience, because there were so many other folks out there that had a need that our footwear was able to provide the solution for. So being able to connect with those people and hear their testimonies and hear the life-changing stories that they were sharing, it was wonderful, because it allowed us to help in the product development to better the product and be able to help serve those that have that need all the better.
Amazing. I love that. Adriana, from a Quirk Labs perspective, I would imagine it may be a mix of both, but I'd be curious, is it based on need or ingenuity? That your biggest discovery?
I think Ryan and Billy sort of hit it on the head, it starts with need. It always starts with need. And then as you build out whatever it is you're trying to solve, and you build out that solution, it leads to ingenuity, especially when you have other people involved. Diversity of thought creates innovation and innovative solutions. And so, yeah, I think it always starts with the need, because you're solving a problem. That's what motivates someone to start creating whatever it is they're creating. And then it leads to other bigger and better things.
Agreed. Quay, I'm curious though, because you didn't know what you didn't know in regard to adaptive. So your need originally maybe of being a designer is a very different perspective in terms of maybe you wanted to be a designer because of how fabulous you want people to look. But I'm curious what your response to this would be in terms of need and ingenuity.
I would definitely say need. As you said, it was originally to make people feel good, feel amazing, because me, that was the goal of me actually getting into fashion. And as actually been doing adaptive style clothing for a long time because I've done a lot of my own tailoring to make sure that my suits fit. And but now that I realize and I'm connecting the dots with the adaptive world, I realize how much more of a need it is for me to do what I do, and how everything has, you know, connected and became an alignment for what it is I'm doing. So it definitely was for sure.
Thank you. Casey, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, fashion has always been my way to express myself, and I wanted garments that were super fashionable, and I wasn't finding those options. So part of it was a need, but also it was I wanted to look good, because whenever I look good, I feel good. And I think, you know, fashion for me has also been like, I think of my first fashion week, and that moment of, you know, people always stare at people with disabilities, and for the first time it was for a good thing. Like, it was my outfit, like I felt good in my outfit, and people were staring because of that. And I think that it was both for me. I wanted, it was a need to be able to, you know, of course, wear the garments. It wasn't going over my spine with the prom dress, but it was also just like wanting to look good and wanting to feel good and being able to express myself.
Absolutely. And this is something that I think everybody can relate to, in terms of what you wear actually does have a psychological effect on you. It's called enclosed cognition. So whether you're into fashion or not, what you wear does have a direct effect on your confidence level. So that is, you know, something that is everybody can understand. Jovana.
Right, so I kind of agree with everyone here. It usually starts with a need. And for me, I was approaching it from a consumer standpoint. My passion has always been working with people with disabilities, and volunteering and through art therapy programs. And the way that fashion is moving towards more social impact and sustainability, there were really no brands tapping into the talents of people with disabilities. And that's kind of what propelled me to create Olivia. But through, you know, in doing so, I realized the more research and, you know, working with people with autism, the employment of people with disabilities is just, it's absurd that I believe it's only 20% of people with disabilities are employed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of now my whole, you know, the need has now been for me to start creating jobs and opportunities to get people with disabilities involved in every aspect. And I think, you know, what we've, you know, the way that we've started with, you know, taking the artwork and creating the prints and giving them this sort of artistic platform is a bit of the ingenuity, but it definitely all stemmed from a need, and it's kind of like just trickled into multiple needs that we're trying to solve.
And your beautiful blouse, who was the designer of that print?
So this is featuring artwork by William Choi, and William is 17, and he has autism. He created a series of beautiful abstract florals, which you can see on here. We actually have 2 colorways in this print. And William has this incredible eye for color. I kind of call him like a baby Rothko. He just has this eye for color combinations that I never would have thought of. And his whole capsule collection, you'll see it's full of bright hues. And yeah, it's just the imagination and the creativity that people with disabilities have is just unbelievable. And I hope that more brands and more companies really start to tap into that.
Absolutely, and I love that you brought that up, because I think it really does tie in a couple of the themes that thread through all the webinars, in that there's so many different ways to engage people with disabilities in the fashion industry, whether that is being the designers, creating product internally by hiring, brand related, you know, in the public eye, all of the above. And I think you all certainly, you know, represent all of the incredible avenues that have been plowed down by you all. So thankfully we are right on time in terms of getting Q&A time, which we're always big proponents of. So please, everybody, ask your questions. This is the time. We have some brilliant people on this panel that have done incredible things. So ask away. Sasha, okay.
Hi, yes, just getting the camera back up. So our first question, and this is to anyone, how do you adapt your equipment and sewing space to be able to design? This person is not able to stand and can't figure out how to cut patterns effectively while seated. So would love for anyone to answer.
I can answer that. So at Kent State, you know, the studio height tables are kind of at standing level. So I had to get a table that was the height of my wheelchair. And then I put cork board on top of it. So that way I could still pattern make and push the pins down into the cork board whenever I was pattern making. And then for sewing, I know industry standard is usually the industrial sewing machines. And you know, the foot pedal is mounted usually with those on the ground. And I don't have use of my legs, and also I wouldn't be able to reach the foot pedal if I tried. So I use a home sewing machine. And I originally started by doing one hand on the foot pedal and then guiding the fabric with one hand. But as my designs advanced, that was not going to work. I needed both hands on the fabric. So I put the foot pedal in between my knees, and then I guide the fabric with both hands now.
Brilliant. Quay, how about you? How did you figure out how to sew with one hand?
So, you know, in my sewing journey, in my sewing classes, you know, everything has been sewn with two hands. So because I only can use mobility only in the upper part of my arm, I just basically use that as my second arm, and as much as possible when it comes to guiding fabric through the sewing machine, because as Casey said, you do need to have two hands to make sure that the fabric guides through efficiently. So I've learned to just use my elbow as much as possible to push the fabric through, hold it up so it's even. And when it comes to cutting out, I love using heavy magnets, or sometimes I use anything in my house that has weight to it, like a coffee mug, to kind of hold my patterns in place, because trying to pin the patterns to fabric can be very tricky, and it can cause frustration. So I've learned to use that. And when it comes to cutting out, you know, I literally just figure it out as I go along.
Rotary cutter too, instead of scissors, a rotary cutter. So that way you can roll it instead of having to squeeze. Scissors was another thing that works for cutting.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So our next question, I think I can answer, but Mindy, you can answer too. People get in touch with people with disabilities to include them in conversations about design. And Mindy, you know, I think you are the go-to person. So I'd like to, you know, we always make sure to do a follow-up email to all of our attendees with contact information and additional resources that you can look into if you want to pursue this conversation. And I want to add to that myself is, you know, we said in, you know, all of our webinars that education and conversations with people with disabilities is like the first step. But, you know, speaking from the design community, what is the next step you think is important for designers to take in their journey to being more inclusive in terms of adaptive fashion?
I'll start. and then everybody can, oh, sorry, you go ahead, Adriana, you
No,
go.
I was just gonna say it's always important to actually have the people that you are designing for, and don't leave them out of the conversation. That's the most important thing that you can do.
I couldn't agree more, and absolutely just adding on to that is, I can say this with a surety that there isn't a designer, a brand, a company out there that can design products for people with disabilities without including them in every step of the value chain, from beginning to end and beyond, because we're still learning every day about things that we can be doing better. And that is certainly one of the reasons why we did start Gamet Management, to be able to be that support and that connector to the population of people with disabilities, so that companies feel supported and that we can do this together in their typical ways. But absolutely, it's doing it with the community by your side.
Yeah, you know, I can chime in on this too. I mean, a lot of the suggestions that we've received from audiences, it's led for some great design changes in our product, as well as getting a better gauge on how big the audience is. Because when we manufacture, we just can't make one shoe. We have to make a whole lot of shoes. So it's important as a business, in order to be able to survive and to be able to add that value on and on and on, is when you make a design change and you make a new entry of a product, it's got to sell. So you got to make sure the audience is big enough to do it. And a lot of these inspirations have come directly from customer feedback. So it's been really fun to listen to those voices.
Agreed. This is a very vocal population. Very vocal, right, guys?
Very vocal.
Absolutely.
And very supportive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've had a similar question like this in sorry, my puppy is joining the webinar. We've had a similar question. I think it's a really good question that's come up in a few of our past conversations, but where do you start in terms of design? Do you start with the disability or need in mind, or do you start with a look or an idea and adapt it?
Oh, that's a great question. Anybody want to take that?
I think with anything, when it comes to creating is inspiration. So even if it's from the standpoint of adapting, creating, you know, something for adaptability, or if it's just a fashion silhouette or an aesthetic first and then adapting, I think that inspiration is the first key to moving forward in whichever way you decide to go.
I couldn't agree more. And I think also in my experience and journey, it was very important to work with mainstream fashion and finding ways to adapt that to increase and include every customer possible. And by modifying what already existed, really helped to create equal dressing and or inclusivity. But that is, you know, again, to Quay's point, I think it's inspiration. That was my inspiration, to be able to have more people be able to wear the same products as everybody else. But I'm curious if anybody else has a different thought.
I think for me it was both, because sometimes it was a need and you start with the need and you would get a more creative garment out of it. Whenever you're like not starting with a garment, you're starting with a problem that you needed to solve. So like, for example, one of my favorite pieces in my collection was I wanted a show-stopping moment and I wanted a train, and I ended up doing one that could attach to the back of a wheelchair. So sometimes it does come from the need, but sometimes it does come from just the look that you want to go for, and trying to figure out how to adapt that and how to make that work, and kind of reinvent that, even from like buttons to using magnets instead. It's reinventing what's already there and using different things.
And I think something that I love when Mindy mentions about the buttonhole, you know, when you're designing, it doesn't necessarily have to, and I'm right, our company right now is not, we're not focused on adaptive clothing. It's something that we're trying to evolve into, but the way that we're approaching it is not necessarily segregating it as adaptive, but designed for all, which I think Billy touched on. And something that, you know, with the buttonhole, anybody, a magnet or Velcro is easier for anybody. So, you know, thinking about things like that, it doesn't necessarily, you know, something as simple as that is a huge step, and it's something that you can still market as it's for anybody can use it. So,
and I think a perfect example of that is actually, you know, the launch of Nike's new sneaker, the Go Flyies, that is just, you know, you don't need your hands to put it on. So that includes everybody. So I think to your point is that there's, you know, innovations that can be made that really serve the greater good of the world.
Great. This next question is for Billy and Ryan, but you know, anyone, please feel free to contribute your thoughts. Just speaking of this Nike shoe that was revealed, this hands-free shoe, how do you feel about it? What are your thoughts?
It's a very clever design, that's for sure. I think there's a lot of folks that'll receive a lot of benefit from it, but I also think I think there's other audiences that need something with more structure or something like that. And I think it's an indication that I think there's two indications here. One is it's awesome to see more focus on design that is kind of out of the box, like breaking away from the traditional methodology of how we put our shoes on. So I think that's really exciting. But I also think it's an indicator that many brands can address this need, and there's room in this space for many brands to be successful. So certainly our design is much different than what that Nike design is, and but that doesn't mean we can't both be successful. So it's really exciting to see these new innovations, and it's also really fun to be able to play in that space as a brand and a business owner.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Unfortunately, they're not going to make it in kid sizes for I don't really know how long, but that's from the research I've done. They're not making it. And I wear a preschool size tennis shoe, so it's going to be a little while before I can get it. But as Billy said, I think it's exciting that companies as big as Nike and like Tommy Hilfiger, they have their own adaptive clothing line. I think it's amazing that these companies are doing adaptive clothing and thinking about a bigger population of people. And so I'm definitely excited about it. But like Billy said, it's kind of a thinner running shoe, and you know, people need more structure. Some people are going to need more structure than that.
Great. So I'm not surprised here, but we're getting a lot of comments asking and requesting for links of where to get your products and how do we shop your brands. So we'll make sure to include those links in our follow-up email so everyone has access to those. But speaking of like where to shop your brands and your designs, beyond your own e-commerce or however you sell, where have you been approached by any major retailers or any retailers who are looking to launch adaptive in their stores? Have any of you had those conversations yet?
I can start. And the answer is most definitely. We get people reaching out all the time, and it can be major retailers, and it can also be small independent stores in the US, but we're also getting people reaching out from around the planet. So, I mean, our website's billyfootwear.com. On that website, there is a tab that says store locations, and you'll find the store locations literally around the planet. And all those folks have reached out to us. So it's been very, very exciting.
I think Casey Juniper is really like just leading the way for an inclusive marketplace, and it's somebody that we've been speaking with, but they've done such an incredible job of curating brands that solve that are adaptive, but they're also beautiful. You know, they don't have where back in the day adaptive was very medical or kind of, you know, rehabilitation like, and they've done such a great job of curating beautiful brands, and I think they have their own brand that they've just launched on there, which I don't know if that's who you're working with, Yarrow, I believe. Yeah, it's just they've done such a great job, and I see, as somebody that doesn't have a disability, I can shop on there too. So that's what's so beautiful about it. It's created such an inclusive e-commerce site.
Yeah. I think the thing that I love about Juniper too, and what really makes us unique, is people with disabilities were really included in every step of the process, from the designers to the editors that do the content, to the writers, our wear testers, our models. We're all in the community, and so the inclusion that came from it and the innovation that came from it was all from the disability community, which is awesome.
That's what we want.
I also, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say something on like another note is, as a new brand, we launched in April of 2020. You know, we at first were trying to get wholesale distribution and reach out to boutiques and department stores and you know, share our story about the artists behind the brand. And I think it scared people at first. You know, it was such a foreign idea, and especially like boutiques, you know, they were just like, oh, I don't know if our customer is ready for this. You know, you have disability on your tag, and you know, your website, it's all about expression with a disability, and people are kind of scared of that sometimes. And but now we're getting inbound requests, and it's so cool to see how the industry has really shifted in just a year. And you know, there's been like Gucci having you know, a model with Down syndrome. It's like, it's just, that's been such a pioneering moment for our industry. And I think retailers and boutiques, and they're starting to follow, and the consumers also starting to follow. So it's really exciting.
Jovana, that's a perfect segue to my, I think my last question, because we're almost at time, but it's about advertising. Our audience member wants to know your thoughts on, they seem to see that in advertising, people with disabilities are grouped into one single advertisement, where they're asking that, you know, to be truly inclusive, should people with disabilities be shown alongside people who are able-bodied? So would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We've been really blessed to work with one of Gamet's models, Grace Strobel, who's beautiful, and she was on the first panel, beautiful model who has Down syndrome. And something that we've done 2 shoots with her, and something that's been so important to me is making sure that we are photographing Grace alongside someone who looks different than Grace, and who is, you know, doesn't necessarily have a disability, because it's showing that there is no, you know, it's kind of breaking down that barrier of segregation. And I think that's, you know, including people in wheelchairs, including people with braces, you know, mixing it up. It's showing, it's providing the consumer a more inclusive vision, and anybody can see themselves in the clothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think along with adaptive and inclusive design needs to come inclusive marketing. You know, we just did we're doing something for Zappos, and the greatest thing about it is what they wanted me to be involved with my entire family. I'm the only one, you know, my 2 kids and my wife, and I'm the only one with a disability. I just love that was their idea, and you know, I got to give them props for that, because I think that's what, you know, like I said, inclusive design, inclusive marketing should be all tied together.
And I think to that point, it's so important to rebrand in the public eye who people with disabilities are. As one of the things I always love what Ryan said is that he's a dad, he's a husband, he's an entrepreneur, he is, you know, a change maker. He's all of the above. He's Ryan, who happens to look, mom, no arms.
Hands, look, mom, no hands.
So one thing I would say is, one thing we found to be very successful, and it's such an honor to do so, is we celebrate the stories of our customers. There's so many incredible stories. Everyone on this panel right here has an incredible story, but there's so many other people out there that have these stories and they're excited to share them. And we try to do our best to be that platform to elevate those stories to be able to get them out to other people. So, I mean, as an inclusive brand in our advertising, we definitely want to have all the skin colors, all the abilities and whatnot, but having, like, being able to share other people's stories has been so powerful and so moving. And it's more of a grassroots type movement, so it's more effort, but you know, you're setting just an incredible foundation.
And if anyone is interested in some of those stories, we posted an incredible interview with Billy on CFDA.com this week, and he shares some of those stories and experiences with us. So please check out all of our content on CFDA.com. One last question before we wrap up and say bye. It's for Quay. You mentioned at the beginning you took an adaptive fashion course, which I think is incredible that a university is offering that. Can you just remind the audience the name of the university so they can look into it?
Montclair State University in New Jersey.
Perfect. Incredible. Well, I'm sad to say we're at time. I wish we could talk all afternoon, but I just want to say Casey, Quay, Jovana, Ryan, Adriana, and Billy, and also Mindy, as always, thank you so much for joining us today. This was so incredibly insightful, and we're going to be posting it on CFDA.com for, you know, it to reach so many more people. And we're excited to continue this conversation. And if there's anything we can answer and our guests can answer for you, please send me an email and I'll make sure to forward it on to our amazing panelists. But thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sasha. Thank you to the CFDA for supporting this, believing in it, and making it a real conversation for change.
Thanks, Mindy. All right, take care, everyone.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.